Hey everybody, welcome. We're so excited for you to be here. As people kind of stream on in, I know we still have a minute to start. Feel free to say hello in the chat. If you already have a question for us, you can go ahead and throw that in the chat, and make sure you select all panelists and attendees so everybody can engage with you and learn from you. Awesome. Sharon said in the chat, hi, I love it. I'll say hello too. And tell us where you're calling in from. We'll give people a minute to come on in.
Okay. Let me know when you'd like me to start.
Sounds like
great.
I wonder if have any of the attendees visited the aquarium? If you have, let us know in the chat. Oh my gosh, Emily says in the chat. I love that. It's so good to build community.
It is.
And we were just talking about this before you all came on board, but the aquarium, if you didn't know, the aquarium is open right now. We have ticket reservations that you can make, and we have a certain number of people per hour that we can let in, but we are open. So if you, we are busy on the weekends, but if you jump online to our website, which is just aquarium.org, you can buy tickets, and we will hopefully see you soon, hopefully in bigger numbers as summer goes on.
I'm hoping to go and see you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we go ahead and get moving on this?
Yeah, let's get rolling.
All right, so welcome to Citizen Science Month. Sue is with us today. So wave at everybody, Sue. She's the director of the Waldport Public Library, and I'm Sharon McCrum, the Family Outreach Coordinator. And we have been telling you about citizen science lately, and we have a lot to show you behind us here. We have books, we have things going on, but today we are talking about marine debris tracking with the Oregon Coast Aquarium and with Citizen Science. And we have panelists here to show you some wonderful things. And I do want to show you some of the cool books that we've gotten from Citizen Science. It's a grant from the National Library of Medicine, and they're all about us research. They gave us a wonderful grant to be able to bring kits to you, which will be coming out soon, and books, and to bring programs like this to you. So hang on to your horses. Here we go. Let's get started. We're going to start with the aquarium and Sarah.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Roberts, and I'm actually the teacher programs manager at Oregon Coast Aquarium. So normally I work mostly with our teachers. I do workshops and curriculum development, but right now we're sort of all hands on deck. So we're all just sort of pitching in the education department. So if you do have any questions about the aquarium or our education offerings right now, because they're a little different with COVID, feel free to shoot me a message in the chat, either directly or just post it to everyone. And we should hopefully, we'll see, have time for questions at the end. But what I'm going to do is talk first about, before we can get into sort of the citizen science side of marine debris, we have to learn about what is marine debris, how did it get there, where did it come from? And so I am going to, let's see, share my screen. And I want to apologize in advance. I have my 9-month-old with me across the room over there in his playpen. So if you hear some funky sounds, it's probably my baby. And hopefully he'll behave. So can we, let's see if can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. First hurdle passed. All right. So marine debris, what is it? How did it get there? What can we do about it? And Caroline will talk a lot more about that last bit with some of their awesome programs with SciStarter. So I'm just going to sort of introduce marine debris. So what is it? Well, you probably, when you hear that term, there's a couple things going on, right? You have the marine side, which generally means the ocean, and the debris side, which you might think of something similar to like trash, litter, all sort of the same term. Basically, it's any human created garbage that we can find in the ocean. Some of it does end up, oopsie, on land and on the beach. And it can be anything. It can be plastic, it can be, styrofoam, cigarettes, boxes, fishing line. Basically anything that's human made is considered debris. So these are, this is from the Ocean Conservancy, and they collect data every year for an international beach cleanup, and people send them their data of what they collect. So the most common things collected on the beaches, the number one thing is cigarette butts. Unfortunately, we find a ton of those on the beaches. And then coming up next, if you'll start to notice a theme with almost all of the rest of these items, and that is that they are made of plastic. So plastic bottles, food wrappers, bottle caps, straws, bags, all of that, lids. Those are all really big, really big problems in marine debris and in the ocean. So those are all kind of the most top 10 commonly found things internationally on all of our beaches, no matter what country you're in and where you are. Here in Lincoln County, most of the trash is similar to Ocean Conservancy's data. So if this might seem familiar, if you go and walk our beaches, you probably see these things a fair amount. Cigarette butts, small bits of plastic, bottle caps. One note though, you might be saying, well, our beaches are really clean. And that is true. Every year we do a beach cleanup, and we actually have to send people into the bushes and really digging around in the sand to find trash. And that doesn't necessarily mean because we are so much more amazing at not littering, although Oregon does have a very good environmental ethic. A lot of people do. But it's because we have such windy, wavy beaches. So the wind, things like those plastic food wrappers that you might drop, it's going to be gone the next minute and going either, back onto land or out to sea. So the beaches themselves are not necessarily a great reflection of what's going on out in the ocean. It just kind of depends on, your local weather conditions and if the trash is staying put or if it's floating out. So why does it matter? Why should we care about marine debris? Hopefully you're all here because you care a little bit about marine debris. Well, most of it is from us as humans. Most of it starts out on land. 60 to 80% is from us on land. It's not from, a boat out at sea. Some of that is a contributor, but most of it is just from us. Trash stays in the environment for a very long time. Oops. So I'm going to get into a little bit later how long it takes for all sorts of different things to degrade in the environment. But suffice it to say for now, it's a very long time. And this fact is kind of scary. So scientists estimate that more than 5 million square miles of the ocean has trash in it. So the term covered in trash is a little misleading, and I'll get into that too, because you might be picturing a giant, pile of trash floating out at sea. And that does exist in some places, but not necessarily everywhere. And as you probably know already, marine debris is a huge threat to all different kinds of marine life. Doesn't matter if it's big, small, swimming, sitting still, basically all sorts of different types of trash can impact almost every organism in the ocean. So this is, a very loose depiction of where we might find those floating islands of trash. So again, I don't want you to be misled and think that those entire black parts are covered in trash. If you were to boat out to those areas, you wouldn't see, a 2 million mile wide island of trash, thankfully. However, if you were to dive in those regions, you would actually see a lot of trash under the surface. So a lot of it'll sink, and it'll either, hang out kind of mid-water, or it'll sink to the bottom. So these areas that are highlighted here in black are just including everywhere that the trash is kind of gathering, not necessarily on the surface, but through the whole entire water column. And the reason that they gather in these regions is because of the currents of the ocean. So you'll see the arrows kind of forming that circle around those two different patches. And those are just showing the way that the currents move. And if you think of water kind of going down a drain and swirling, it's basically that on a huge scale in the ocean. So it's kind of swirling all of the trash together eventually into these concentrated regions. You'll see one is off, the US coast here in the Pacific, and then one is off Japan. And Hawaii is hugely affected. I don't know if anyone's here has been to Hawaii or is from Hawaii, but there are a lot of beaches there that collect a ton of this trash because you'll see how the currents move, right? It's kind of sweeping it right through the Hawaiian Islands. All right, so what I'm going to try now is, and if it doesn't work, that's okay, because I can share this as resources later. Can you see a different screen now, a video screen?
We still just see your slides.
Okay, so I think what I need to do.
If you put the link in the chat, I can play it from my screen.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
So there's a couple quick videos I want to show, just because thinking of, the scale of this is really hard to, I think, imagine. One second, without actually like seeing it. So let's see here. Let me stop my share for 1 second so I can get back into the chat. And I'm actually going to send this to all of you guys just in case you want to, bookmark it for later. So I'll just send it to the whole chat. And this first one is from NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. They're basically in charge of, ocean research, atmospheric research, weather. So they know what's going on, in other words. And this is a really great little mini documentary. Hopefully the sound will work.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
That was really good.
Yeah, so that's a really nice, that's kind of my whole presentation in a nutshell, honestly. It's a really great, quick little resource. If you're talking about this later to friends and family and you're trying to explain like the why of it, this is a really great go-to, really short and sweet and quick little view of, kind of all that's going on. So I have one more video and it's a long video, so we're only going to actually watch the first minute, but I wanted you all to see footage of someone diving in the actual garbage patch, right? So again, if you're looking at the surface, you kind of see this pile of trash or you see nothing, but it's really hard to kind of understand what it honestly kind of looks like until you're in it. So this is some video footage taken by divers. I think it's off Japan. And we'll just watch the first little bit to just kind of get an idea of what it actually looks like if you were to go there.
In an underwater paradise, a plastic nightmare. Diver Rich Horner just days ago filming stunning images, searching for fish, but finding an ocean of plastic trash. Bags, bottles, buckets too, he said. Off the tourist island of Bali, it's meant to be home to hundreds of manta rays. He saw just one, and it's hard to
pause it there, Caroline.
Amid the
Thank you. So it does, you can, I have posted it here so you can watch the whole thing later, but again, it's really striking. And a lot of researchers have started calling this, instead of the plastic gyres, the garbage gyres, calling it plastic soup, because it's just what it is. It's not just the surface, it's not just the bottom, it's kind of swirling through the whole entire water column. Oh, look at that plastic soup. I love it when things connect like that. And I've
check out.
Yeah, and I've read that. That is an awesome resource. Yeah, that's a really, really great resource. Thank you so much, Sharon. Go to your local library. All right, so let me get back to, let's see here. Let me do a screen share again. Technology, here we go. And luckily, those are all my only videos, so we don't have to worry about it. So before we kind of get into, what we should do about it and really what all of its impacts are, I wanted to share a little bit about how it gets to the ocean. So we've talked about, it comes from people, it comes from the land. But if you're thinking, okay, if I'm in, Montana or Idaho, I'm a very long way from the ocean. How could it possibly, how could what I do here possibly affect the ocean? And it does. And the answer is because of something called watersheds. So if you hear that term, you might think of like water or a shed. It's not a shed. It's actually, it's also known as like a basin. So it's just an area of water that drains all of the water bodies in it to one spot in the ocean. So if you look at the picture here, you have, kind of those two hills on the side, the rivers and streams in the middle. And that whole basin between the hills would be considered a watershed. So here in Lincoln County, there's several different watersheds, and they stretch all the way in, some of them to Corvallis or even past it. And it's just, again, it depends on the river systems and the streams that lead to that particular beach. So you have to kind of trace it back and look at where all the creeks are running. But it includes every single tiny little, little river, little stream, like that creek in your backyard. Everyone is part of a watershed. Even if you live all the way in the center of the country, your river is eventually going to drain to another river, and all of them drain eventually to the ocean. So we really are all connected to the ocean, no matter where we live and what we do. So some of the sources besides just plastic, let me cover that up again, that can pollute not just the watershed but the ocean. Some of them are, you can point at and say, okay, it comes from that factory, and that's known as a point source. If you can point and say, okay, this particular oil spill came from this boat, for example. But most of the problems are actually from what we call non-point sources, and that's just kind of everyone's collected impact. So that's runoff from farms, from homes, from cars, the street. And that's the majority of pollution in the ocean is just from kind of our collective, our collective contributions to that. So I mentioned this earlier. So about 80% of marine debris originates from land, and about 20% comes from ocean vessels. And a lot of that is either cruise ships is a big one, or a lot of like oil rigs out at sea. That can be a big source as well, because sometimes they don't have anywhere to dump the trash and it just goes in, or that, again, in storms and wind, it can sometimes just, accidentally escape. So now let's talk about, why we care that the stuff is in the ocean, because you might think, okay, the ocean's huge, the weather is rough, surely stuff breaks down quickly. The problem is a lot of trash does not break down quickly at all, possibly ever. And here's the kicker, is that plastic was only invented really in the 50s. A little earlier, I was really invented in like the 40s and really kind of came to prominence in the 50s and after. So all of this plastic that was invented at the very beginning of plastic, a lot of it has not broken down yet. So we do not know how long things actually take. So you'll see some estimates on here, like, disposable diapers, 450 years. Plastic was not invented that long ago. This is just an estimate based on how quickly other types of plastic break down. But the problem is when it breaks down, it doesn't totally dissolve and disappear. It just breaks into smaller and smaller pieces. So if you've heard the term microplastics, that's really come to kind of public awareness, I think, pretty recently. And that's exactly what it sounds like, tiny little plastic fragments. Some of them come from like synthetic clothing, like fleeces, or just any other plastic that's broken down. And that tiny microplastic, we have not seen it go away yet. It just basically, once it gets super tiny, it just kind of stays that way. And it gets into the food web, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So if any of this is like shocking or surprising to you, I'd love to hear in the chat, or again, any questions that come up along the way, let me know. wool socks was funny to me because it's like you think, oh, wool, wool is, natural. I can use wool, and it's a lot less than some of the other things, but it's amazing to think that even just a wool sock takes 5 years to break down. So compared again to like a plastic bottle, that's, that's kind of crazy.
One question that's popping to mind for me is, so this debris, like I'm assuming it makes its way to the ocean because it's not properly disposed of, but is there any chance that debris can make its way from like landfills to oceans, for example?
Totally. Yeah, that's a huge source. And it just depends how that landfill is managed. Some landfills are really good about, like, once they get to a certain level, they cover it with like dirt or something. They cover it up to basically bury it. And then when they add on more, then they'll cover it. So it's not, this giant mountain that's totally exposed. But yeah, a lot of it can definitely, again, with wind, weather, if, something blows off a landfill, lands in a creek that goes to a river, that goes to the ocean, it can definitely happen that way. My kiddo's fussing in the background, but I think he'll be okay. So, all right. So let's get into kind of some of the saddest parts of this. And this is probably, if you're here and you're interested in this, it might be because you've seen some of those images of animals that have been impacted by marine debris. And it's very heartbreaking. So the more we learn about this, the more that we learn, pretty much almost everything, not just in the ocean, but even on land, is really affected by marine debris, and especially plastics. So something like, again, 40% of marine mammals have been found to eat plastic. All these numbers on the right with the animal symbols, those are just from one survey. That's not like overall. That's just one survey that, went out, and it impacted, again, tons of different types of animals. Almost every seabird is eating plastic. A lot of seabirds out in the deep ocean hunt by vision and by smell. And so plastic can actually grab onto the smells of the ocean. So if you think of like a Tupperware that you've stored like tomato sauce or something in, and it smells like that a really long time, plastic absorbs smell really well. And so the plastic is absorbing the smell of the fish and everything around it. The bird, swoops down, it sees something shiny that looks like a fish, it smells like a fish, it scoops it up, and it's not tasting it or chewing it, it just swallows it right down. So seabirds in particular are really, really affected by this. So some of the ways that, marine debris can affect different types of animals, there's a lot of ways. It's not just, you might be familiar with animals getting entangled, like this poor sea lion here. That's a huge problem. Pretty much, anything can get entangled if it swims into the wrong area of the ocean, right? So a lot, it'll entangle them. They won't be able to hunt, or they'll even drown if they're caught, under the water. Another one is just by eating it, and that's something else you may have heard of. So, things that swallow it, either the actual plastic can harm, their internal organs, or it's not harming them initially, but the toxins from the plastic can leach off and get into their system. And we're not sure, again, this is kind of a new area of study. We know that it's starting to affect things. It's affecting some, for example, like Dungeness crabs. They're studying if microplastics are affecting their reproductive capabilities, and it's finding that it can. So reproduction is a huge one, even things like cholesterol, things like that. This little albatross chick here has that, that wound on its nose, and that's a disease. And plastic, we think, can actually carry disease as well. So again, if a bird ate a piece of plastic, the plastic itself didn't harm the bird, but if there was, some sort of illness on it, then that can pop up too. So again, this is all, relatively new that we're just learning, the huge scope of the impacts here. So another problem, just compounding all of this, not only is it affecting animals on an individual basis, but it's getting into the whole entire food web through something that we call biomagnification. So the basic idea is, each zooplankton, which is a tiny little like krill or shrimp, that might only eat like a few pieces of microplastic maybe, right? But then a herring eats a bunch of zooplankton, each of which ate a few little pieces. So it's eating even more. Then a salmon is eating a bunch of herring that ate a bunch of zooplankton, and it's gathering. So it goes through the whole food web. So by the time you get to a top predator like an orca here, even if it didn't eat any plastic directly, it ate all of these animals down the food web that did. And so you might be thinking, okay, well, who else is at the top of the food web? We are, and we like to eat fish and squid and shrimp and all that delicious stuff from the ocean. So again, this is all new. So I definitely put not enough data to be sure yet. So don't panic. My goal is not to freak everyone out, but I think it is important to kind of think about that, again, as the top of the food web, we are kind of at the top of that biomagnification chain. And there's some really, really new research that is showing microplastics showing up in people. This first study got a huge, you might have actually seen this, it got a huge amount of attention. The problem is there's only 8 people. So you kind of have to weigh that a little because that's not a great, study size, but it is a little hint of, possibly the rest of us. And again, we don't know the actual impacts of that yet. We know some impacts on animals, but on humans, nothing's proven or shown yet. So it's just something, to kind of be aware of and watch for, but don't panic over it just yet, but keep an eye on the data. So there's other impacts too. We talked about, animal ingestion and entanglement, but, it affects people and animals in a lot of other ways. It can damage navigation systems. I mentioned it carrying disease. It can also carry invasive or non-native species to new places that can then harm the local ecosystem. Of course, it costs a lot of money to clean the stuff up, and it also could cost, a beach town, if their beach becomes very polluted, they might lose tourist income. So the effects of this are not just, animals, it affects humans and it affects a lot of different areas. So there's some really cool strategies that scientists are working on now to mitigate this. You might have heard of the Ocean Cleanup Project. It's gotten a lot of attention. It is still kind of in the planning stages, and they're finding, a lot of, I think, mechanical issues with it. But the idea is to build this huge boom to basically collect trash kind of as it moves through in these nets, and then come and pick it up, basically with a dump truck boat. Periodically. That again, it's gotten a lot of attention, but it won't save us all. It's not going to collect everything in the ocean. It's still got a lot of issues. So something cool to follow though. We're also finding that some things like bacteria and even mealworms can eat plastic and digest it. So, again, maybe not a large scale solution, but a smaller scale, possibly smaller scale strategy we could use. And if you just look up like biological plastic mitigation or something along those lines, you'll find there's actually a lot of really cool, there's fungi, all sorts of things will eat plastic. So Caroline's going to get into this even more with some really great citizen science opportunities, but some things we can do in our everyday lives, really easy. A couple things I do, I carry utensils around in my purse. So especially now we're all getting takeout, and a lot of places now you can select, I don't need utensils. And if you have your own, then you're saving a bunch of plastic right there. Everyone knows to carry tote bags to the store. And another big one, once we all start going to restaurants again, is bring your own containers. And that's a harder one for me to remember too. But if you can carry like a Ziploc or a little Tupperware in your bag or in the car when you're going to a restaurant, and then that way they can put leftovers in that and not use up, potentially a styrofoam box or something like that. And then another big one, even just beyond kind of personal actions like that, is to just talk about this and talk about what you've learned with everyone around you. And, look at those videos, do some research, have some kind of facts in your back pocket. Like that 5 million miles of the ocean is covered in trash, things like that are really striking. And that way, when, you go to a restaurant, you ask them to use your own container and they're kind of weirded out by it, you can share why you're doing it. And, who knows what effects those might have. It's, everything we do has these huge ripple effects that we may not even ever know. So you just as one person can definitely have a really big impact. And one more shout out, and I think Sharon was going to give a shout out to this too, but this is really great timing because this Saturday, Solve, which is an Oregon kind of beach cleanup nonprofit, is doing one of their big annual beach cleanups. So if you go to, I think it's just solve.org. Oopsie, and in my slideshow. If you go to solve.org, it'll tell you all of the beaches that are participating, and it's a lot of them along the whole entire Oregon coast. Oh yeah, do you have a flyer there?
Yeah, I do. Let's see.
Yeah.
Here we go. In Waldport, it's at Governor Patterson, and we have the address here. I can put it in the chat of who you'd contact to sign up for the one locally in Waldport.
Yeah, and if you're in Newport, usually we're at South Beach is a good site. So yeah, if that's a really easy way to get involved. You can go and pick up a ton of trash, bring your kids, bring your dogs, all that good stuff. So yeah, if you felt kind of moved or inspired by this, then I definitely encourage you, if you have time this Saturday, head to the beach and pick up some trash. And right there, you've made a huge impact, and you've probably saved a good amount of animals from interacting with that plastic. So with that, I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to turn it over to Caroline, who's going to go more into the citizen science projects that you can do around this topic.
Yeah, and Sarah, I just want to say I've watched a lot of presentations on marine debris, and that was so informative and so helpful. And I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
And definitely, I'm going to put the aquarium, I'm going to throw the aquarium website in the chat too. Probably all you locals, already know it, but we do have a lot more info in there. We have a whole, we have our Oceanscape network with all sorts of education resources. So either reach out to me or check out the aquarium website, and we have tons more info.
Yeah, and I can't wait to visit your aquarium, number one. And number two, I really can't emphasize enough like how well you covered that issue. And I know for those listening, it can be really scary, but like as Sarah said, there are things you can do. There's a direct call to action for you all in your community with the cleanup this weekend. So let's make it.
And one quick, just about that, because again, with this issue, I hate leaving, feeling like, oh, anyone's, completely like heartbroken and devastated by this and feeling so overwhelmed and helpless. So what I do when I feel that way, because I do a lot of environmental education, so I have to talk about all these deep, dark things. Just think of one thing you can do like right now. And it might be small. It might be just going and buying your own, reusable water bottle. Bringing a, devising a system to remember your tote bag, one teeny thing. And if you can start with one thing and then add another thing, pretty soon it'll just become a habit. So definitely don't feel overwhelmed. Just, look at some things you can do, make one, reasonable change at a time. And even again, every small thing you do can make a really big difference. So thank you in advance to everyone for hopefully, making some changes to help the ocean.
And thank you to you for educating us. And yeah, that's such a good idea. And one thing I try to do is I focus on the reduce aspect the most. I think that's the easiest way to modify our own behavior. So like when I go out to eat, I'll bring my own Tupperware instead of using the restaurants for it to go. Little things like that, they really do make a big difference. And if you want to help inform data and driven insights, citizen science is a really great way to do that. And for you all, you have a really good opportunity to use the project I'm going to spotlight in your own community this coming weekend. But first, I just want to quickly define what citizen science is in case you haven't heard of it before. So millions of people enjoy science and nature. You all probably count yourselves in this number. I mean, many of you said you visited the aquarium before, so we know that you love, the undersea world. But you also may really love birds or butterflies, or maybe you want to understand how the brain works, or perhaps you look up at the night sky and ponder different constellations. Well, you are in good company. There are millions of people just like you. And the great news is, thousands of scientists need volunteers. There are questions that they can't answer without your help. As we say at SciStarter, scientists don't have enough eyes, ears, and perspectives to answer every question, to know everything there is to know, to do all the research that needs to be done. That's where you come in. You can do citizen science by collecting or analyzing data for an ongoing research project. One example of that is the marine debris tracker, which we'll talk about today, but there are infinitely many examples. There's the Stall Catchers project, where you can play an online game to annotate blood vessels for researchers at Cornell University. There's the Crowd the Tap project, where you can do a simple scratch test with a penny and a magnet on your pipes to help researchers at North Carolina State University, who are supported by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. You're helping them create an inventory of safe drinking water just by doing a simple scratch test. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There are citizen science projects that are looking at biodiversity and pollinator populations. Just by counting the number of pollinators that visit a flowering plant in your community, you can help researchers understand if pollinator populations are doing well or if they need some help. And this is a really important project because bees are responsible for every third bite of food we eat. And I could just keep going. If there's a science for something, there's a citizen science tie-in. Citizen science is anytime you're meaningfully involved as an individual in the scientific process. And anyone of any age, anywhere, can be a citizen scientist. But sometimes they can't find each other. The researchers who need your help can't find people like you who are so passionate and want to make a difference. That's where SciStarter comes in. We connect you to the real science you can do. So what is citizen science? Ultimately, it's a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. We term things to be citizen science when they allow you to turn your curiosity about the world into real impact. And for SciStarter is your place to discover these opportunities. There are over 3,000 projects, events, and tools listed on SciStarter. Researchers have added them to the database because they want to reach the volunteer community. And if you make a SciStarter account, you can keep track of all the different projects you're joining. When you discover a project on SciStarter, you usually go somewhere else to do it. For example, the Marine Debris Tracker project has its own app. But for projects like Marine Debris Tracker that are SciStarter affiliates, you're able to track the number and frequency of your contributions in your SciStarter dashboard. This is good because it gives you bragging rights for later. But it's also good because it allows us to assess collective impact and see how much we're accomplishing together. I'm going to play this really brief video about what citizen science is and what SciStarter is, because I think it sums it up really well.
Did you know that people just like you are shaping science and their future through small but important actions? That's right. You don't need a lab coat. You don't need a science degree. We're not talking about kids' chemistry kits or build a rocket activities. We're talking about real science we can do together. How can I do that, you might be wondering? The answer is easy. Become a citizen scientist. Citizen science is all about people like you and me getting involved in things that matter to us, like the environment, our health, oceans, and even space. Science needs more eyes, ears, and perspectives than any single scientist possesses.
Together, we get to make discoveries. We can make a difference by making and sharing our observations, analyzing data, or even playing a game to solve a problem. Want to learn more about citizen science? A movement that's sweeping the globe? You're in the right place. There's a lot of great material here to get you started and help you find, join, and participate in projects through SciStarter.org. Visit the SciStarter website to begin exploring the possibilities of scientific participation. And create a personal account to receive project suggestions tailored especially for you. Together with SciStarter, we can all play a part in scientific research that can change the world for the better.
So there you have it. That was SciStarter. And one of the projects that you can discover on SciStarter is Marine Debris Tracker. I really like this video the main researcher made, so I'm going to play it for you to introduce the project.
We're so excited you're interested in Marine Debris Tracker. My name is Catherine Youngblood, and I'm a research engineer with Jambeck Research Group at the University of Georgia New Materials Institute. We study upstream solutions to ocean plastic pollution.
With an estimated 8 million metric tons of plastic entering our ocean ecosystems every year and having devastating effects on ocean organisms that accidentally consume it, this is a problem that's growing bigger every year. We're passionate about preventing plastic pollution in our oceans and waterways, which is why we created the Marine Debris Tracker app with help from NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, almost 8 years ago. With the Marine Debris Tracker app, thousands of citizen scientists from countries around the world have tracked over 1.5 million items of litter so far. Citizen scientists just like you are helping us create a bigger picture of the plastic pollution problem by tracking trash wherever you are, in cities, near rivers, out in the mountains, or cleaning up a beach.
Thank you for tracking and for helping to protect our oceans and waterways around the world. We're happy to have you on board.
So that's the Marine Debris Tracker project. Basically, They're asking you to fight plastic pollution by recording the litter you see in your community. Because it's really great to do a community cleanup. It's great to recycle. It's great to reduce your consumption, right? It's great to safely dispose of trash you see in your community. But if we have data-informed insights, we could potentially identify hotspots of pollution and craft some sort of upstream solution. And the Marine Debris Tracker project, you can do it anywhere in the world. So it's called Marine Debris Tracker because they're trying to trace patterns of how debris is getting to the ocean. But if you happen to, I don't know, take a vacation to Kansas, you could still participate in Marine Debris Tracker because that observation would be really valuable to understand if a certain type of debris is making its way from the center of North America to the coast. So you can do this project anywhere in the world to help researchers understand the pathways that debris and litter and plastic pollution take to make it to the ocean. So this is one way that you can fight plastic pollution because I always say that knowledge is always the first step. So if we have an agreement of what's going on the ground, what's the problem, what trends are emerging in this problematic issue, then we can come together to come to some sort of solution about it. So citizen science empowers our understanding of the problem, which could allow us to come to a solution. So how do you participate? Find the project on SciStarter. So I recommend going to scistarter.org/NLM because we have specialized instructions there, we have extra videos, and some more resources, including a citizen science tutorial available in English and Spanish. So that's just a great first stop on SciStarter. We fully recognize that it can be a little overwhelming to have 3,000 projects, events, and tools to look at on SciStarter. So that's why I really like that page because they're projects that were picked especially for libraries and the people who love libraries like you all by the network of the National Library of Medicine. So start there, go to that URL. That's step one. Step two is download the Debris Tracker app. You can find a link to do that on the scistarter.org/NLM page and log in through SciStarter on the app. So if you have a SciStarter account, if you don't have one yet, you can make it on scistarter.org/NLM. If you do have one, you're able to log in through SciStarter on the app. And it allows you to help contribute to the research outcomes of identifying hotspots of litter and pollution to fight for upstream solutions. So this is a picture of Catherine out and about. Catherine Youngblood is the main researcher on the project, tracking debris. And I tracked all sorts of debris with Marine Debris Tracker. I have tracked, plastic rings. I have tracked plastic bottles, Coca-Cola cans. I even logged one time an abandoned traffic cone that I found in a swamp on Marine Debris Tracker. It's really, really easy to use. They have a great interface. And you can also explore the data, which is cool. If you're a curious person like I am, you're able to see where other people have reported different types of litter. And if you're an educator or you just like playing around with data, you could try to see if you could do your own analysis about different pathways of debris. So that, just to reiterate, you get started with Debris Tracker by going to scistarter.org, like you're starting the science, scistarter.org/NLM. And this is what the interface of the app looks like. So once you download it from the scistarter.org/NLM page, you click Start Tracking. There are a bunch of lists you could pick from. For example, the library could make their own list if they wanted, if there were particular items they really wanted people to monitor. But I recommend using the NOAA list, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's list, because that's the most popular for people in the US. And then you just click what you see. If you see an aluminum or tin can, you add that to what you monitored that day. And you would start a new session every time you do a different cleanup. So every time you spot some debris and you clean it up, log that on the app. And then they're able to note that, yes, debris appeared here. This is somewhere we might want to pay attention to. And you don't, it's an interesting interface. You don't log in until you finish counting all your debris. So when you go to submit, that's when you actually have the login through SciStarter option. And there have been over 2.5 million observations on Marine Debris Tracker from all over the world. And it's just really amazing that they've tracked all these different items. I think this was an example from just one country, how they tracked all of this. So it's not just the US, you're part of a global movement of people tracking things like plastic food wrappers, tobacco, sheet-like plastic fragments, paper, cigarettes, you name it, you can find it. I was actually doing a cleanup in Fort Lauderdale, Florida a few weeks back, and I think they must have set a world record for cigarette butts. I just kept on picking those up. And make sure you're doing this safely. If you either use like a grabber to pick things up or perhaps gloves when you're participating in a community cleanup. So just to reiterate our instructions, you find the project and you make your SciStarter account on scistarter.org/NLM. You download the debris tracker app and you just go out into the world and you start tracking what you see and safely clean it up. And that contributes to a data-informed understanding of what's going on with patterns of pollution, so we can come to some sort of consensus to prevent this problem and fight plastic pollution together. I can take some questions in a sec about the Marine Debris Tracker project, but I just wanted to reiterate that it's Citizen Science Month. There are events going on every day in April, and you all are really blessed because you have a great library team. And we're actually coming back again tomorrow to talk about Globe at Night, which is a project that allows you to monitor not plastic pollution, light pollution. I'm getting my pollutions mixed up. Light pollution. So light pollution is whenever your view of the night sky is obscured. And that can happen because street lights point up instead of on the street, or for all sorts of different reasons. But light pollution is a really serious issue. It can impact circadian rhythms, so human health and human sleep. It can impact animal migrations, and it obscures our view of the beautiful night sky. So the Globe at Night project is trying to understand what's going on with light pollution globally. And if you get enough people in your area to participate, you could get a really good idea of what's going on in Oregon. So I'd love to see you all again tomorrow. And I'm really glad that you all gave me the chance to talk about Debris Tracker today. And I'm also particularly glad I got the chance to learn from Sarah. So I'm going to stop sharing here and see if there are any questions. So Sharon mentioned, yes, Saturday at 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. at the park, there's going to be a cleanup. So I would love to see all of your data come through on Marine Debris Tracker. I think that'd be really cool if you all immediately started taking action. And Sharon mentioned teens can use their volunteer tracking for their academic resumes. Yes, and also adults can too. SciStarter, we just offered a new badge for citizen science. I'll put the link in the chat. But if you go through our process and you participate in 2 projects, our training, you can get a badge to show you're a citizen scientist for your LinkedIn and that you've volunteered. And then Sarah said, if you're a local educator and would like support using these resources or talking about marine debris as a student, I'm here to help. Oh, that's awesome, Sarah. Everybody should email her at education@aquarium.org. And I am indeed a Floridian, and I love we all share such a beautiful, rich natural heritage in North America. Whether you're on the West Coast or the East Coast, there's a lot to love here. I'm just really grateful to be here, and I hope to fight marine debris with all of you so we can preserve it and keep us all healthy, right? Avoid those microplastics and search for upstream solutions. Everybody, get your questions in the chat. I want to ask, while people are doing that, if they have any questions, I just want to ask Sharon and Sue if they have any questions for Sarah and I.
It sure gives you a lot to think about. I'll tell you, I am going to get started on that myself. And we have talked about some projects here for actually doing some recycling projects with the kids this summer to turn some of the debris into art. So we're working toward that. And maybe we'll get a chance, Sarah, to share that with you, that project.
You know, there's a citizen science project about that. I think it's called, it's one of those cool fusion projects. Debris Art SciStarter. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's called From Debris to Art. It's based out of the MDI Biological Laboratory in Maryland. And it's really cool. Like they're basically, I love it when something's interdisciplinary like that. I'm gonna put it in the chat. I'm gonna say cool project. That could be something fun for the library.
Yeah, debris to art. I think that could be good.
I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, what's something about this work that surprised you, that you didn't expect when you first started working on these issues?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. You know, gosh, there's so many things. I mean, just the scope of it, right? You know, all of the images and facts I shared with you about how much there is out in the ocean. I think that's really striking to everyone kind of first learning about it. You know, and then another thing too, that it does come from everywhere, you know, so I think, you know, a lot of us, you know, think, okay, I don't, you know, throw my litter down in the park. I'm doing my part, like it's all good. But, you know, there's so many other things that people could really easily and cheaply do in their everyday lives, you know, to really help put that collective effort in and reduce our impact. So I think that's a big part of it as well, is just knowing that, you know, every little thing you do can really have a huge impact. And that's what I remind myself, you know, because sometimes it's easier to go, you know, a disposable utensil route, or for example, or something like that. And, you know, don't beat yourself up if you do. That's another thing, you know, you don't want to feel guilt about just living on this planet. We all have to live here. You have to, you know, eat and buy things and all of that. But just, you know, if you can make the right decisions and kind of better choices, then yeah, it's a really huge help. My dad agrees, babbling in the background.
We had a lot of people who wanted to be here today, and I have a feeling the beautiful weather that we're having right now has kept some of them away. But this will be recorded, right? So we'll get a chance to be able to share that with the community again, too.
Definitely. I'll send you the recording right after it finishes exporting, once we're all wrapped up. So you can distribute it to folks in advance of this Saturday's event.
Yeah.
But I don't see any more questions. Sharon, do you have any more questions for us, or any closing thoughts for us?
I just want to thank the people that were here today and the interest they're showing. And, you know, a little bit by little bit will make a difference. And to know that we have a lot of books on this topic that are going to be useful. And one of them that we got, and it's checked out right now, is called How to Give Up Plastic. So that could be a really great one for this sort of thing. And again, one thing she said earlier is to not be overwhelmed. When my husband was sick years ago, and I was sitting at the dietitian, and they were telling me all these things that had to happen. And then they said, but look, just one step at a time, one step at a time. Do what you can to begin with, and then go from there. Don't get overwhelmed.
That's beautiful. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Sarah and Sharon, you have given us such great calls to action. And Sharon and Sue, I can't wait to see you both tomorrow. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
everybody.
Thank you, Waldport Library, for all you do. If you're not familiar with everything that the library does, check them out. They do, it's more than just books. They do a ton of really great stuff. So thank you so much for hosting this.
Thank you, Sarah. See you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.